spoilers for Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Supernatural ahead.
Hello there universe, and welcome to another live action video. Yes, it's been a while, but don't worry, hopefully it'll be worth the wait. Because in 1997 to 2003, audiences were treated to a quirky little show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. For a lot of people, this show broke a lot of barriers. It was a supernatural comedy that had its own unique take on classic creature mythology, it had quirky characters, out-of-genre spectacles, and a hardcore fan base bordering on the edge of a cult. Truly, there was no show like it. And then Supernatural came along. This show, running from 2005 to God knows when, is a supernatural comedy, also with its own unique take on classic creature mythology. It has quirky characters, out-of-genre spectacles, and a hardcore fan base bordering on the edge of a cult.
I think cult is probably a fair term to apply to the supernatural fandom.
So, safe to say they have a lot in common. So I've decided I'm going to do a comparison and see which is better. Now before I start, I just want to say I love both of these shows. I think they are both great shows and I highly recommend them to all of you. Also, even though Supernatural is still going on into its 11th season, I'm only doing this up to season 5. Why? Because that's where the original creator, Eric Kripke, wanted it to end. That's where he left the show. And also, season 5 has the devil as the big villain. You can't get any bigger than that. Now, I'm not saying everything past season 5 is bad. As far as I'm concerned, it may be good. I don't know. I haven't seen any of it. But I'm just not going to use that in this comparison. And also, comparing 5 seasons of a show to 7 seasons of a show just feels more balanced. Nevertheless, here we go. This is Buffy vs Supernatural. It's ladies first here on Versus. Buffy the Vampire Slayer follows the story of Buffy Summers, a teenage girl who is destined to hunt down vampires and demons alike. With the help of her watcher Giles and her friends at her side, she battles all sorts of mythical creatures as well as overcoming her own personal demons. Supernatural, on the other hand, follows Sam and Dean Winchester, two brothers whose mother was murdered by a demon when they were infants, and ever since their father has raised them to be the most efficient demon hunters in the country, travelling from city to city, looking into mysterious cases and saving lives, all the while trying to find the demon and kill their mother and get revenge. From this basic setup, I would have to say Supernatural has the edge. Their story is a lot more personal, and the constant change in settings as well as a larger focus on the detective aspect makes it more interesting. Buffy is thrown into her situation and is gifted with powers to help her battle demons. Sam and Dean are just two ordinary guys who learn how to survive. However, there is one thing to consider about this. Both shows are comedies slash dramas, and they can usually go from full extreme either way. One episode can be hilarious, the next one heartbreaking. What separates them from this aspect is that Buffy had this down from the start, while Supernatural tried out as a hardcore drama at first, but once they realised how corny it was, the writers just said, fuck it, and decided to add in the goofy aspect to make it more appealing. So while I respect Supernatural for adapting to become a better show, Buffy knew what it was from the get-go, and from there we have to look at it on a season-by-season basis. The first season of Buffy really doesn't have anything particularly interesting about it. It's the introductory season, and is very basic at that. Supernatural, on the other hand, has an awesome first season. While it is the most serious seasons of the show, most fans also describe it as the happiest season because, well, we'll get to that. Fact is, the first season for Supernatural is just much more engaging, though I will say Supernatural can really drag along a storyline, often expanding 1 or 2 seasons. Buffy's writing was much tighter. Each season had a villain and its own story to tell. Because of this, a lot of Supernatural stories can sometimes blend together, but when you watch Buffy, the stories are so distinguished that you never mix them up. But with that being said, Buffy definitely started to run out of steam near the end of its run. Supernatural was strong all the way to the end, and not to mention the end of season 5 is one of the most epic finales that I have ever seen. Lucifer and Michael, two of God's children, are about to throw down and cause the apocalypse, and Dean drives up in his Impala with Def Leppard blasting on full volume.
Howdy, boys. Sorry, am I interrupting something?
Fuck yeah, Dean is a badass. But however, that doesn't change the fact that Buffy was a lot more creative with its stories, and was still able to have serious storytelling without having to resort to dark and dreariness. So because of this, I have to say I feel like Buffy has the superior storytelling. Supernatural may have a better setup, but Buffy had the better execution. And that's all that matters. Another massive part of these shows was the comedy, so let's take a look at it. Like I said, Buffy knew what it wanted to be right from the get-go, and it was solid all the way through. Every character was funny in their own way. Buffy was sarcastic, Willow was awkward, Giles was snooty, Anya oblivious, and Xander, well, he was pretty much everything. Supernatural, though not starting off very comedic, boy did it get hilarious when they did. But not only that, they got creative. Take for example the episode Hollywood Babylon, where the Winchesters have to investigate a horror movie set being haunted by an actual ghost, working as a great satire on the generic horror movies of modern day Hollywood.
Brad, this is a horror movie.
And who says horror has to be dark? It's sort of depressing, don't you think?
Or how about the mystery spot, parodying Groundhog Day, where Sam ends up reliving the same day over and over again, always starting again whenever Dean dies. And no matter what Sam does, Dean always ends up dying. And of course, you can't forget about changing channels. Often considered to be the funniest episode in Supernatural's history, where Sam and Dean end up getting forced to be characters in other television shows, including cheesy sitcoms, cop shows, medical soap operas, and even commercials. Because of this, I feel Supernatural was a lot more clever about its comedy, and it had a lot more memorable moments for it. Sorry Buffy, but you can't compete with genital herpes.
I've got genital herpes.
They say a hero is only as good as their villains, so let's see what we've got. Buffy, as you can imagine, fights mostly vampires, except in the Buffyverse, vampires and demons are sort of the same thing, just roll with it. Now the best thing about these creatures is the practical effects. The costumes and makeup look amazing, but apart from that, there is really nothing special about them. Every monster fights the exact same way, and almost all of them have the exact same weakness. Apart from their designs, there really isn't that much separating one from another. Yeah, there are a few exceptions, but for the most part, they are all pretty generic. Supernatural, on the other hand, is a lot more creative. Each monster not only has a unique look, but they all have different origins, different weaknesses, and Sam and Dean actually have to research how to beat them, not just stab them with a sharp stick and boom, it's done. Buffy has a wide variety of villains, including Drusilla, the Mayor, the First Evil, 3 nerds. Man, that was stupid. While Supernatural usually sticks to just demons, the main ones being Azazel, who was really cool, Lilith, who was okay, and of course the Big Daddy himself, Lucifer. And you really have to give Supernatural credit for making Lucifer a complex and interesting villain, rather than just going for the generic red-horned devil like you always see. Buffy's characters may have had a wider variety of personalities, but Supernatural made them much more personal and interesting. However, none of this really matters, because Supernatural had the balls to put the greatest villain of all time, Death, into their show. So, let's see how they did.
Won't you spare me over another? But what is this that I can't see with ice cold hands taking hold of me?
I'm sure you're walking, pal.
When God is gone and the devil takes hold, who have mercy on your soul. Dad, oh, Dad. My name is Death and the end is here.
Supernatural wins. What good is a hero without their merry band of misfits at their beck and call? Buffy the Vampire Slayer is known for having one of the greatest supporting casts of all time, and there is no wonder why, because just look at how damn many there are. There's Giles, Willow, Xander, Angel, Cordelia, Oz, Anya, Dawn, Tara, Spike, while Supernatural has Bobby, Cass... Actually, that's it. I mean, yeah, Supernatural has had plenty of supporting characters like John, Chuck, Crowley, and... Ruby. But they only appear for a few episodes in their respective seasons. Really, nothing major. And don't get me wrong, Bobby and Cass are really cool, but they cannot compete with what Buffy has to offer. While not every character in Buffy was the greatest, there are too many good ones to be denied. Xander and Anya's quirky and charming relationship, to Spike's badass nature, to Giles' role as Buffy's surrogate father, it is all awesome. And really think about how much Buffy did that no other show had at the time. The most engaging relationship on the show was between Willow and Tara, and unlike other TV shows of the time, hell, even today, they never shied away or tried to censor the relationship or try to make it seem like anything other than what it was. It was a believable and endearing couple who had some of the most emotional moments. In fact, I'll go ahead and say it, their relationship is the only thing that makes Season 6 worth watching. Not to say Season 6 is awful, but a lot of it feels like, well, padding. In Buffy, every character has a major story arc. Everyone has something that makes them unique. Everyone has something that makes them interesting. The supporting cast is the main reason I love this show so much. So, in case it's not obvious, Buffy gets the point. And here we go, the final round of the matchup. Slayer vs Hunters, Heaven vs Hell, Girl vs Boy, Buffy Summers vs Sam and Dean Winchester. Now you may be saying to yourself that this is an unfair matchup, considering that it's 2 against 1. Well, thing is, Sam and Dean are pretty much 2 sides of one coin. One of them is thinking ahead, the other is headstrong. Sam is the brain, Dean is the heart. Together, they make one solid character, so I'd say it's fair enough to judge them as one. Let's start with Buffy. Buffy is a teenage girl gifted with powers. For every generation, there is a Slayer, a person who is destined to fight demons and protect mortals. Throughout the show, we see her go from a typical teenage girl to a confident and mature woman. Buffy is able to make the tough choices that no one else can, to fight the battles no one else will, and no matter the fight, she never stays down. Throughout the show, Buffy has to combat obstacles both physically and emotionally, growing as a character and as a warrior. Buffy is often seen as an icon amongst female characters due to her strong demeanour and gradual character growth, and it's not hard to see why. She is the ass-kicking, advice-giving, level-headed fighter that a good story needs. To put it simply, she is a hero done right. Then, there are the Winchester brothers, fighting tooth and nail to keep the world safe from demons. They don't have any special powers, they just have the know-how and guts to get the job done. The only thing they see as more important than their jobs is each other. After everything that they have been through, the only person that has been there for the whole ride is each other. And because of that, they will always do whatever they can to make sure the other is safe, whether it's putting their own life at risk or even the entire planet. I've seen plenty of characters in my time that are willing to sacrifice anything to protect a certain someone, and I've also seen plenty of stories where they show how unfeasible an ideology that can be. But I've rarely seen it done both at the same time. Sam and Dean know exactly how illogical and selfish their values lie, but that's not going to stop them. As far as they're concerned, they've sacrificed so much, why can't they be selfish on this one thing? But because so much focus is given on their relationship, it makes the ending all the more impactful and emotional. On one hand, this does make them more complex than Buffy. Someone who has always got their head on straight and always does the right thing, even if she has to sacrifice something of value to her in the process. But here, we have characters who know it's wrong for them to think that way. It makes them more complex by making them more flawed people. But at the same time, that's exactly what these people are. Flawed. For example, and I know a lot of people are going to hate me saying this, Sam is a fucking idiot. He trusts the demon over his goddamn brother. He invites Satan to possess his body, assuming he can overpower him, and he gets addicted to demon blood, even though he hunts them for a living. I mean, there's making a character more flawed to make them more complex, and then there's just making them a dumbass. But this isn't to say that they're selfish people, it really is just this one part where they behave like this. Like in the episode, What Is and Should Never Be. Dean actually gets to experience the life he always wanted. He has a family, his mother's still alive, everyone is happy. Except he knows that him being happy means other people have to die, and that is not something he can live with. So he gives up all that he has to go back to the crummy life of being a hunter. Why? Because then he can protect people. Then he is doing something worthy, and that is very respectable. And when I say that they've been through hell, I'm not exaggerating. I mean they have literally gone to hell. I would argue that they've had to go through a lot more sacrifices as well as a physical challenge than Buffy has. I mean, Buffy not only has powers, but a whole team of people ready to help her out. For Sam and Dean, they don't have that. They have Bobby and Cass, but not much else. Though ironically, even though Sam and Dean are supposed to be the two normal guys, Buffy is probably a lot more relatable. She goes through high school, she goes through relationship troubles, has problems financially and has her fair share of trauma. This does give her an edge in a way because she can be relatable as well as idolised. And no, it's not just for female audiences, everyone can relate to Buffy in some way. Also, I'd say Buffy goes through more of an arc throughout the series than Sam and Dean does. If you go from the pilot to the final episode, there is an obvious change in her character. With Sam and Dean, I think the only thing to change is Sam's haircut. Now you could argue this because Buffy was going from teenhood to adulthood and Sam and Dean were already adults, but even then, that would still make Buffy the more interesting character to watch and grow. So in the end, it's a tough choice. Do you go for the relatable character who goes through more growth, or do you go for the more conflicted characters who have a more eventful experience? Well, for me personally, something about characters who are willing to sacrifice everything for each other, as well as having the show explore that from all angles, makes them really fascinating characters. And also the idea of two humans having to go through as much pain as they do, and still come out fighting for the right side, that's impressive. I love Buffy, I love both of these shows. They are some of the most creative, well-written shows of the 21st century, both leaving their impact in the fantasy genre and having completely earned their success. But in the end, just by a hair, I say Sam and Dean are the better characters. So, overall, Supernatural is the superior show. So then Universe, what did you think of this video? And what do you think of Buffy and Supernatural in general? Whatever you think, let me know down below and I'll see you next time, Universe!